Dr. Jack Tipps is a certified clinical nutritionist in Austin, Texas. He received his PhD from Clayton University in St. Louis, Missouri, and his certification in classical homeopathy in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He is a teacher, lecturer, and author of numerous publications and books. Please welcome to the podium Dr. Jack Tipps.
Thank you.
Right one goes ahead.
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
Good to meet you. You know, I'm in the clinical nutrition field, so I thought, wow, how great is this to get to visit with dentists. I referred my first patient to have silver amalgam fillings removed in 1982. And went to a dentist. Of course, the dentist was not trained in the Huggins method and this type of thing, just drilled the things out and put some porcelain in or something. The patient said that they got a good radio signal after that, and they were pretty happy with it because it was classical music. And anyway, we're going to take a look. I'm going to give you a little overview and meta-analysis on the subject of microbiota, which refers to the bacteria that particularly live in the GI tract. Now, coming on the wings of Dr. Curatola, of course, you realize how hard that is. He talked a lot about the oral microbiome and proper way to treat it, and that if you nourish and nurture the oral microbiome and don't try to destroy it, then it pays you back. Not only with good immunological and good neurological information, but it sets the stage. It really is. It's a gauntlet from the top to the bottom of different microbiomes that are made to protect us, to nourish us, and we live in a relationship with these bacteria. So microbiome refers to all the DNA of the microorganisms, the microbiome. And the scientists that do things that, I don't know why it doesn't end up on the front page of the New York Times, but you know, I mean, one day we wake up, right, and Pluto's no longer a planet. I was kind of disappointed. I felt Pluto had been kicked out and was really being denigrated quite a bit, and I kind of had to treat Pluto for some depression after that, but no longer a planet. Well, the scientists have also come up. These are the scientists that work with the human genome. They have now included all of our bacterial species in the human microbiome. And so they're saying, before anyone can think about it, or if you can turn the pages to realize that Jen did get married, or whatever's on the front page of American news, we're finding that this is pretty revolutionary. As revolutionary as kicking Pluto out of our solar system as a planet, we now have incorporated thousands of different bacterial DNA, and they're saying they're human DNA now. They're all part of us. It's who we are, that we're in this inseparable relationship. So they've really redefined what it is to be a human being. We need to be thinking about this because we've not been treating our better half or our other half, or what we're going to allow maybe to be 49% of our life experience as a human being. We've not treated it very well. And so now it comes forth that this DNA is all in cahoots, that they speak through a language of DNA itself, these bacteria. And they have a lot to do with exactly how much inflammation, how long we live, things like menarche for women, puberty for boys into men. When weaning occurs, these bacteria have a huge say in human destiny. I think I'm going to try to give you a new... The right button. Haha, yeah, you got to do the right one. I was doing the wrong one. Okay. Scientists have considered now this microbiome, or the microbiota, which refers to the bacteria. The biome is the DNA. And is referring to this as a new organ system. So all of a sudden, you know, we're thinking there's a tongue and esophagus, and there's a liver, and a gonectogazoid, a gizzard, and we have all these organs that make up a human being. Now there's a new one. It just happened to be invisible. So it only took, 300 years since the microscope, and we now realize we have a new organ system. So we ought to learn about the care and feeding of it and have the same care of our microbiome as we do for our mouth, our teeth, and our livers and our pancreas and so forth. If you were listening to Dr. Curatola, he talked about the oral microbiome and how it protects the teeth, how it really serves to reduce the inflammation that plays in the background. And what scientists are finding is the microbiome is directly related to the amount of inflammation we're running in our bodies. So it's turning out to be a huge factor. So an organ is really just a differentiated part of our bodies that performs a specific function. We'll be talking a little bit about the functioning of our gut microbiome, which has become my specialty. I would say in the last 2 years I've actually read them, the research studies, and I can't believe how lost scientists can get into the jargon and minutia. But I've actually waded through the research studies of about over 1,000. I think I cleared 1,000. And then I'm going to present from the meta-analysis of the natural health model and what I've learned. Because starting last year, I started teaching doctors. I have had a couple of dentists come to my seminar on the microbiome. Dr. Curatola hosted one of my early ones in New York City. And what a blessing, he was for people as we dig deeper, because when we learn what's wrong with our health, we see it's interrelated with this microbiome. And when we learn the rules of how to correct it, not only are we learning the essence of natural health, but if we look at microcosm, macrocosm, I remember there was a book once called Everything I Need to Know About Life I Learned in the Sandbox, or something like that. Share, don't hog the toys. I guess don't eat the little Tootsie Rolls the cat left in the sand. Something like that, that gave all the meaning of life, kind of like Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance. Well, everything we need to know to solve Iraq, everything we need to know to solve stress and strife in the Middle East, everything we need to know to solve inequalities and heavy-handed oppressions and loss of freedom and everything going on in this country, loss of the ability to have self-destiny and health, it's all in the microbiome. If we just look at the laws that govern the bacteria and how they interplay and the different species are supposed to work and why they build biofilms and how they work together or not, we would have the overview. So microcosm, macrocosm, we've got a new organ system. So the body made a strategic alliance. If we want to go back through history, we would say, what happened to early people? They got a wound and they died. It went infected. We learned in school the horrible bacteria, the staph and the strep and so forth. And then we learned about viruses and how deadly they could be. And this world is hostile and these things can kill us. But today the tune is changing. These powerful, deadly bacteria, we're being told now, not only can they mutate or pleomorph out of benign species, but if there's enough good guys, they keep the bad guys in check, and the bad guys can be productive citizens of our microbiome society. But when we give them the terrain, toxic terrain that they can proliferate, then their waste products can kill us, and it's a challenge. And then we have the whole issue of the antibiotic threatening the microbiota and how fast they can share their DNA and become antibiotic resistant. It's really a fabulous time. But throughout history, we realize now, perhaps if we do, that the reason World War I came to an end was simply because of microorganisms, right? The flu epidemic. Prior to that, there was even bacterial species that literally wiped out indigenous cultures. It's serious business when your life is at stake. Throughout the history of humanity, our immune systems, the two immune systems, which you would call the Th1, the Th2, or you would call the acquired and the humoral immune systems, they've learned to deal with these microbes. And at times, the microbes have caused plagues and wiped out significant portions of humanity. So it has been serious business, yet there are always those who live. There's always those that have adapted and survived in order to perpetuate the species. The prime directive of life, adapt and survive. In natural health, we have a third caveat when we recognize that everything is adapt and survive, and that is the third caveat there is and express the most optimal state of health possible. And we see this throughout the plant, the animal kingdoms. Now, this strategic alliance has formed, and it is a flexible living document. So, we actually did sign a document on this, and it's a relationship, a triad, maybe 4 parts. But it's between the microbe and their destiny, the human immune system, the human diet, and the 4th player is the human genetics. So there have been strong genetics and there have been weak genetics. The law of nature is the weak genetics get culled out. The microbes have played a huge role in the culling out of weak genetics. So in the natural health arenas, we look to something called innate intelligence. Chiropractors are familiar with this because Dr. Palmer started it. It was a chiropractic term, but it's basically, we say the body can heal itself. There's functions that go on without our direction. And so innate intelligence is something that's relied on in the natural health therapies, because if we take the nutrients in, our bodies figure out what to do with them, and the bodies can self-heal. That's innate intelligence. Innate intelligence is found in the brain, in its conducting business of all the neurological processes and hormone balancing. Also, it's found on every cell membrane. So if we think of the word brain and we're looking for an internet society within our bodies of communication between membranes and brains and nerves and dendrites and neurons and throughout the body, there's an internet connection of communication called innate intelligence. I saw that you're having a homeopathic dentist speak, and the homeopathic dentist would say the innate intelligence is the vital force. The vital force has tools to keep us alive beyond our will. These tools might include vomiting to get a poison out. It might include perspiration. It might be diarrhea. It might be fever. This is the movement of the body's innate intelligence and vital force to adapt and survive so we can perpetuate the species. We've learned recently that genetics are not our destiny. Now, when you get to be my age, we were brought up in the concept that if you got diabetes, you can't get rid of it. Your parents had it, your grandparents had it, you're going to get it, you got it, too bad. Let's use some drugs and try to perpetuate a better state of daily health while leaving the cause of the disease untouched and other diseases coming forward. Not a very good prospect for it to be the essence of the medical model. But now we know, because of the human genome study, this was 12, 14 years ago, the world had a major scientific breakthrough. And we had, 11 countries that spent billions of dollars and had built the huge computers, and scientists of many countries worked together, and we mapped out about 95% of the human genome. And we figured that was enough. We called 95%, that's close enough. I thought that was a strange position for scientists because there's all this junk DNA and they didn't really know what to do with it. But That kind of captures my interest, you know, particularly when it was so disappointing, because all big pharma was lined up to say, show me the atherosclerosis gene and I'll kill that gene, and people can eat whatever they want and not plaque up their arteries. And they were lined up in queue waiting for what the Merck manual says, there's about 15,000 diseases now. They were lined up to find that gene for that disease and patent the silencing of that gene. And as it came out, when we looked at the human genome, our very precious and smug and self-satisfied look at us human beings, we're not really much different than a fruit fly. Just a few little pieces of DNA. Or we could be an agouti mouse or a chimpanzee. There's actually it's a lemur. But the disappointing thing was, you know, how did we get the opposable thumb? How did we get the big brains? Why are we such masters of dominion over the earth? And we expected to find in the genome study what's so special, and it just didn't come up. And there was this letdown. But I tell you what, right out of the ashes, that phoenix rose again, and the science of epigenetics turned up, and now we realize the reason we've survived for hundreds of thousands of years and are the dominant species is we can turn on a dime. It's not 20,000 years of evolution to change a gene. You know, like human beings probably used to make vitamin C. Now we don't. Now we have to go to food to get it. You know, we have a genetic flaw. We may have lost it. The dog has it. So epigenetics means we can adapt very, very quickly. And what's so exciting about epigenetics, right, that's how you express something different out of your genes without changing your genetics. If you're with me, maybe a histone folds differently, RNA transcription grabs a different little zipper there and brings it out, and the cellular metabolism works differently now, all because of something, because we felt stress, because we ate something. And what science is finding is the things that's tripping these epigenetic switches, in addition to the negative things like chemicals and mercury, big switcher. But we're also finding what switches it back, what switches it for good. Food, plants, minerals, things from living life, not chemicals, not drugs. Not Rockefeller's oil launching big pharma. This is the message that's coming out. This is all in the studies. And then we find that our medical institutions are finding these studies. Baylor Medical, Boswellia cures bladder cancer. MD Anderson, curcumin can turn off cancer genes. These things are coming out. India, wanting to preserve Ayurveda, is running medical studies, and they find these plants can do it. Not isolates, not extracts. Plants that have similar suffering. Plants that grew in nature and fought off other species. Plants that are totally reliant on the earth microbiome, on the bacteria and the fungus in the soil to derive its life nutrients, just like human beings get our life nutrients from our gut microbiome. It's what the bacteria use that feed us through the microvilli. We talk about absorption and assimilation. That's what the bacteria give us. They are an intermediary. So nature's solution was this relationship with the microbiome, that we said to the microbiome, guys, you can live in our tummies and we'll provide you 98.6 degrees, your favorite temperature. We'll make it nice and moist. You can grow like crazy and we'll give you a food supply. So we set up Shangri-La for bacterial species to live in us, but we also had some rules. And we said, you do not come into our body. If you do, we have to kill you because you will try to kill us. So we don't cross the border. Good fences make good neighbors. And that was all great till the advent of leaky gut. So the covenant was set. And the bacteria give us vitamin K, and they give us vitamin B6, and they synthesize B12. And they break down our nutrients, and they make the fats, and they make the proteins, and they make the polysaccharide sugars that nourish our bodies. So we have this great thing going. Most importantly, they're our frontline defense. You get that Staphylococcus aureus, and it gets down the hatch, and maybe you didn't have enough hydrochloric acid that day in the stomach, and it comes on through. Your bugs will take care of that bug. It will either use it or we'll lose it. So the great support of the human immune system, you've heard it said, I believe, with the secretory IgA antibodies, that 90% of the human immune system is in the gut. 70% of your serotonin, the feel-good neurotransmitter, is in the gut. There's a reason for this. We just have to look at the facts, right? So, real quickly, the soil microbiome. One time I met a farmer up in Pennsylvania. I think they're out of actually West Virginia. I said, well, what do you grow? And the lady answered, dirt. Yeah, but what do you grow? I wanted to talk about turnips or rutabagas or, something. Nope. She farmed earthworms, bacteria, fungus, and grew healthy soil. And she knew that if she grew healthy soil, that the plants would grow strong, and that a few little bugs munching on those leaves would trigger within that plant defense mechanisms that would make that plant hardy, would make that plant better. And the plant could withstand the bug, and the bad plants would get eaten by the bugs, and the good plants would live. And then I said, aren't you out there picking bugs? Because she was organic, right? Interesting concept that sometimes the bugs do us good. And they do us good too. We say the ultimate microbiome is 85% good guys and 15% bad guys. And you would say, why do we want any bad guys at all? What if I could just clean up my microbiome? Wouldn't I be all sweet and wonderful? But the bad guys are not so bad when they're surrounded by the good guys, and they keep the immune system vigilant. Why would our genetics have all these diseases? Why were people lined up to capitalize on the genome study? Why would we have diseases? I say, it's an interesting thought. Why do our genetics have multiple sclerosis and atherosclerosis and even Lou Gehrig's? Why? Adapt and survive. Is not nature impeccable, impartial? A person with multiple sclerosis can reproduce the species and have healthy offspring. Cold, maybe, but there's the law. The disease is the body's choice to express because of the epigenetic signals. No longer do we think of diseases as something that jump off the sidewalk and grabbed him and there, but for the grace of God go I. Diseases are earned. And we have different genetics, and some are more susceptible, and it breaks your heart when you see a young child going into a dread, life-destroying disease. But the disease and the body's symptoms are the expression of the confusion and the expression of the body doing the best it can. There's directives to give the body to correct that, and it's all founded on a good microbiome. Very quickly, we can look at some microbiomes. We have the skin microbiome. And you may not realize this, but if you have someone in your life that you fell in love with, it was only by getting permission from your skin microbiome did that occur. Because these bacteria are looking at the pheromones and the sweat, and they're determining the genetics, and they send the signal directly to the brain. If your genetics are too close to that person, you may not fall in love. Because the genetics being too close is an inferior immune system, right? That's the caveat of nature against incest. Despite the Europeans and the Egyptians trying to interbreed to keep the strains of genetics pure and better than people that they fenced out of the country club, the fact is, it's a law of nature. It's not a social law. You get the birth defects and your inferior immunity. Your skin said, I like this person. Your skin microbiome. It told the brain, and it said, okay, go ahead and let a little oxytocin loose. Your oral microbiome gets involved, does it not? Because, let's say through saliva, right? So you kiss the person. More data to the brain about the viability of that person to be a significant part of your life. We're being herded by bacteria trying to serve us. There's a nasal microbiome. It's very different than the oral microbiome. It's similar to the lung microbiome, but it has its special role. The blood can filter through the sinuses like a French drain around a house. And so it's exposed to more toxins that come out as nasal discharge. And so it has a different microbiome to protect us. And then there's the genitourinary microbiome. These change a lot. The woman's microbiome changes before birth in order to deliver the lactobacillus species to the baby's skin and somewhat to the baby's oral process. The breast milk provides microbiome support of lactobacillus and bifidobacteria to the infant. If you remember the old textbooks, it said the infant's in utero GI tract is completely sterile. And therefore, you have to inoculate. In China, if there's a cesarean, they will rub the baby on the mother to get the skin and to get some of the nasal oral microbiome established. The recent information, as of maybe 18 months, science has found bifidobacteria in utero, in the baby's intestines. So even if that child were cesarean, which has been going on for thousands of years, that child would have a seed, a starter. Now, science can't figure out how the bacteria got there, right? The placenta barrier. How did it get there? It's a mystery. It's one of life's mysteries. If you build it, they will come, I guess, is the theme there. And we have the GI microbiome, which has a direct link to the brain, and it's called the second brain of the body. First brain, second brain is the gut. And I guess the third brain would be the adrenals. But there's a bidirectional link to the brain. It's through the vagus. There's also chemical messengers. I'll bring up a little on this, and DNA communication. But our brain talks to our guts via the vagus nerve. The enteric nerve is connected to the vagus, and there's direct hotline. It's like Obama calling up Putin to see what's going on. They have that red phone hotline to each other. And the brain talks back to the microbiome. The microbiome can call in an airstrike. It can call in the human immune system, and we open the tight junctions. And out goes our immune system to save our lives. And it can be called in by the bacteria. Our immune system is at the beck and call of gut bacteria. And our brains, though, can be manipulating what's going on with the gut bacteria if the brain senses we need something from them, like nutrient. Science is uncovering these wonders of this alliance. The issue is, in working with microbes, is these bacteria build biofilm. We've only pretty much thought about biofilm as something in the sink, or something in the water tower, or in food processing equipment, and now we realize that these bacteria all love to build biofilm. So does Candida. It'll build biofilm too, and it builds them for protection. So we look at this process. If we understand how biofilm is built, we understand how to take care of these guys. And number one there, they land on the intestine lining. Number two, think of yourself in this case as a shipwrecked person back in the sailing ship days. You land on a sandy shore. You realize that there's hostile animals and or natives. One of the first things you might do is look around and see if anybody else survived. You find a few buddies in number 2. Y'all agree we got to build a fort if we're going to survive. And so in building the fort, these bacteria differentiate. They have soldiers, they have food gatherers, they have waste disposal, they have species that can build. They all start adapting. Their genetics start changing. They build this biofilm out of whatever is available. Some people thought magnesium stearate would help these guys build biofilm, but they don't need magnesium. They can do calcium or iron or anything else. Magnesium stearate will build it in a sink when you put it down the drain, but not in vivo, not in the body. So the interesting thing about the microbial world, in the big biofilm there around number 4, they're functioning with entire city structure. So whether it's San Juan or Houston or New York City, they've got garbage disposal, they've got hunter-gatherers, they got forage, they have bacteria that process nutrient for the colony. They may incorporate a heavy metal such as mercury. If they're bad guys, they'll put mercury in there. Maybe they use it like a nuclear reactor or something. I think they get an ion gradient going from the mercury. This is why Candida will hold mercury, and when you kill the Candida, there's a Herxheimer. That's what we learned back in the 80s with Dietrich Klinghardt taking a forerunner role. As you kill Candida, you get Herxheimers. It's from the mercury or other heavy metal and chemical. And the Candida was actually our friend. It was saving our bodies from absorbing the mercury in it. And we find the perils of benefactors, don't we? We find the blessings of parasites. Everything's got the other side to it. E. coli, one of our great good buddies in the GI tract, unless it's the toxic pathogen E. coli. Strep, there are buddies in the gut. Oh, but maybe they turn into a strep throat, a different species. So now we can't just blindly go in and say we want to kill the bugs, which has been the medical model. We got to kill the bugs because most of them were good. And they have the same name. So we look at a probiotic supplement and it'll have streptococcus on it. And people go, oh no, because we have that knee-jerk reaction. Now, what they do is they'll quorum sense. Now, that's, I'm sure, it means the bacteria hold a coccus and they say, we need to change. And so they start changing each other's genetics. They have ways of doing it. They gene share. And they'll quorum sense, and then they'll, see if I can get back, then they'll say, you know what, we see the planktonic form here right at number 5 coming back. And you have this mutation going on in the hive here, and they go back to being planktonic free swimmers, not in a biofilm, and they spit them out. And they go off to seek their fortune, like the 3 little pigs here. They're off to seek their fame and fortune and set up a new colony. So the colony of biofilm doesn't outgrow its boundaries. It doesn't do what we love to do in Austin, Texas, and the builders just keep building, and the roads keep getting crowded, and more people move in, and all of that going on. Instead, it was a proliferating of colonies rather than lowering the quality of life for everyone. That's what these guys know instinctively to do. Okay, so they can talk amongst each other. There's techniques that we employ in natural health to go after these biofilms. One is botanical, and sometimes you do need to knock down the bad guys. And so you do it judiciously, because if you knock down the bad guys, that's like an antibiotic, right? You knock down the bad guys, you do it too long, you have collateral damage. You do it too long, you're going to have mutation, exactly like antibiotics. But the botanicals have something very special about them. Because human beings grew up in nature eating these botanicals for thousands of years, even if they were medicinal, our good species are adapted to them. Golden seal, echinacea, we're adapted to those to a certain extent. The bad guys aren't. Because if the bad guys were, they wouldn't be such bad guys, but the fact is they would have killed us before we ate much more of those. So it's been a natural selection process. The good guys are resistant to the botanicals. They're happy. The bad guys, these botanicals don't necessarily go in and just kill them like an antibiotic and threaten them. They go in and block their ability to quorum sense. So we go in and scramble their communication, because when we try to oust the pathogens, they're going to fight, right? They're going to adapt and survive. That's what they're doing to the antibiotics. But the botanicals are far superior because they foul up that quorum sensing. So the bad guys can't say, let's build a better biofilm, or let's sample that antibiotic, and then I'll tell everybody else how to avoid it and how to resist it. So we can use botanicals to very good effect and interfere with the pathogens. Enzymes called hydrolytic enzymes can break down the biofilms. And they can do it to the good ones too. But there are certain components in a lot of the pathogenic biofilms that can be hit first by enzymes. So yes, you can take too many enzymes. Yes, you can take too many botanicals. Someone tells me, I've been taking grapefruit seed extract for 3 years. It's not doing anything but, damage. Everything's adapted to it. The bad guys are probably stronger, and that's why they can't get rid of their candida. They're not employing their tools according to the laws of nature. Enzymes, very important. In the pecan industry, you have a nice, big, beautiful pecan tree there in the southern United States, but they have a predator, the webworm. Have you ever seen cotton candy-like globs up in a tree, and it's full of little worms eating the leaves? The webworm. All you have to do is you take your little fly fishing rod, which everyone should have if we're going to avoid stress, and you just whack that nest a little bit. Just cut the cotton candy. You cut a hole in it. It's not long. You just watch your watch, and the red wasp comes from far away, and they go right in there and they grab those worms. And so you can use the wasp to take care of it. You don't have to do pesticides. And we do that with the biofilm. We just knock some little holes in the shell, the M&M coating on those biofilms. The immune system and our probiotic species will go take care of those guys. They don't want them around. They want their real estate. The biofilm was protecting them. Another disruptor for biofilm are chelators, because you can pull the heavy metal. So many of the pathogens are holding a chemical toxin or a mercury or a lead. And if you pull it out with a chelator, then you disrupt the biofilm. It's like a terrorist attack on another country where the first thing you do is knock out the electricity or the nuclear reactors or whatever. And then that cripples them. So we have this strategy of employing these things to go after the biofilms. The prebiotics can do it too. These are the fibers. Fructooligosaccharides can be one. As long as the person doesn't have the small intestinal overgrowth, they do well on that. If they have overgrowth in the small intestine, then a prebiotic just makes them bloat all the worse. They have another problem. You may not be that familiar with phage therapy. It's pretty popular in Russia, and it's using virus. There's species of viruses that will only attack one species of bacteria. One that I've played around with, I say played around with because it's fairly newly available, is a phage that goes after the two pathogenic forms of E. coli. And it leaves the good guys alone. So now, see, you can have directed antibiotic influence. And so the virus invades that bacteria and destroys it. And it replicates, and 1 million more of these phages come out, and they go out and kill the species until they're all gone. And when they run out of their food supply, you no longer have pathogenic E. coli. So now there's no more bladder infection, there's no more vaginitis. There's no more dysbiosis of E. coli in the GI tract. The bad guys are wiped out, and the good E. coli and other forms can take over. So now we have literally a small amount of virus that can be taken, wipe out the bad guys, and then when it's all over with, they deactivate. There's no food for them. So there's one of nature's solutions. If you're a little skittish about that idea, the United States Food and Drug allows the spraying of biophages on all tomatoes. So if you eat a tomato, you're getting a virus, because that's what keeps the tomatoes fresh. We just don't talk about it much. Then you recolonize the probiotics and let them take over. And again, they may use detrimental species and have them under control. Again, think of society. We might want someone who, under the wrong circumstances, would be a vandal or a criminal, but sometimes maybe in the balance of nature, you need that kind of can-do. I don't know. You know, sometimes maybe an unsavory friend would be good to have around. I think these bacteria do that. They'll use some of the pathogens. We don't have to be afraid of them. We're looking here at an enterocyte that lines the GI tract, the microvilli. This is, of course, showing the potential for leaky gut. I'll talk about that again in a minute. But we just wanted to see the biofilms are on those little fingers. They line the fingers, so don't think of anything too big. They're really, really tiny, but they protect there, and they're turning our food into nutrient, and they're protecting our intestines. And these are the protecting cells that line the intestines. And so this is a visual image of where they are. And we want these biofilms, the good guys, to line our bodies and to serve us there. As I did the research, as mentioned, the 1,000 research studies, I started sorting some data out of it. And it's not germane today, but I found 20 so far, 20 ways that the gut microbiome raises inflammation in the body. I'm talking activation of toll-like receptors. I'm talking superantigens and antigen responses. I'm talking about mimicry, to name a few. Direct relationships. Science has now found that if, in a case of a woman, if she has a certain pathogen vaginally, she has a certain pathogen on the skin and a certain pathogen in the gut microbiome. 1, 2, 3, the influence to the brain epigenetically unleashes psoriasis. See how important this gut microbiome is? It's not a matter of putting tar on your head. It's a matter of correcting the cause. We are being empowered as a species right now as we learn about the microbiome, literally to create a whole new system of medicine, a whole new way to treat, because now we're getting deeper into a cause. These bacteria, through their 20 methods, there's a bacteria that a pathogen that builds its biofilm with an enzyme called transglutaminase. It uses this enzyme. The immune system knows that enzyme, and it says, I'm going to go get you. I see you're going to use that enzyme. It's kind of like a third world country buying uranium today. You know, the United States would be there to see what's going on. And the situation is the launching against transglutaminase, which is also used for thyroid peroxidase. It launches the autoimmune response against the thyroid. It's a gut issue in many cases, not every cases. It's only linked with the TPO, the thyroid peroxidase, not the thyroglobulin and other forms of autoimmune thyroid. But there's a gut thyroid connection, there's a gut brain connection, there's a gut liver, a gut pancreas, a gut obesity, a gut immune connection. And we have the wrong guys in our tummies. Now, why do we get the wrong guys in our tummies? Right? Well, I've been taking antibiotics. You go, well, I don't take antibiotics. Do you eat commercial meat? You got enough antibiotic and USDA meat to take care of altering your microbiome. Oh, now you got to be organic. If you go organic, according to psychiatry, you have a disease. Seriously. It was like orthorexia nervosa. Somebody that thinks they're superior to everyone else, and they express it by only eating certain foods and avoiding foods that might have chemical toxins. I always thought I was just doing the right thing for my body, but I've had to admit to my wife now I have a neurological disease. She told me, well, she kind of knew all along I was a little strange. Okay, communicate our microbiome through the nerves. Chemical messengers go out. These bacteria in our gut, they release waste products. If it's Vibrio, cholera, it opens the tight junctions, poisons flood into the body, it kills people. We have to have massive diarrhea with cholera, but we're trying to push the bad guys out, the vital force. The brain can open tight junctions, bidirectional. Opens tight junctions, sends the immune system out. But if a bacteria opens tight junctions and gets access to the body, it's a horrendous infection. And today it's no longer a question of do you have leaky gut. The FDA took away leaky gut testing from someone of my licensure, which is out of New York as a clinical nutritionist, and because they said only a medical doctor can prescribe lactulose mannitol. Do you know what lactulose mannitol is? I mean, it's like water, unless you have a lactose sensitivity, but I figured I had enough brain to ask a patient, gee, do you have a milk allergy? But we can't get that now by prescription, but there used to be a way to tell how bad leaky gut is. People say, well, don't you need to do a test? Why aren't you sending me to the doctor to get this test run? I said, it's really not a matter of if you have leaky gut. It's just a matter of how much do you have. Because that's the state of the world, truly, because of the hybridized grains. American wheat, 64 chromosomes, of which probably 60 of them are inflammatory. These are proteins. Ancient strains of wheat did not have that. They had 6, 8, 4. I have patients that order their grains from Europe and Israel, and they make their bread. They have no gut problems. I check their inflammation markers. They're not running inflammation. They can eat an ancient grain. They also ferment it. These people, they have the same disease as I do. They're making pancakes, but they're grinding their grain after fermenting and drying it. And they let the little bacteria take care of the gluten. See, the bacteria will alter gluten. It may not be totally gluten-free, but that gluten is not inflammatory once the bacteria work on it, like yogurt, or like making cheese, or like making wine, or the way we used to make beer, which were all good foods. Truly good foods, until we had to make all American beer be like tap water and have the chemical of the can and all of that, and on it goes. We keep degrading. Okay, DNA talks to DNA. If there's one universal language between the wargs of Arcturus and the humans of Earth and all species across all intergalactic world, you get some DNA. You know what they do, you know what they eat, you know how they fight. DNA tells everything about what a person is doing. And DNA can be profiled, by the way. You get DNA of a criminal, and they're now running profiles on DNA, and they can start figuring out, what's the person eating. That may give a clue on how to catch them, or where that person will be at 11:15 on Tuesday. I'm serious. So very, very much information now can be brought out of DNA. Just to summarize the symbiotic relationship, it's called microbial homeostasis, means that there's a balance, there's a healthy immune system. And the microbes in our gut are telling our immune systems how they develop relationships and that set point. What's happening today? Allergies, allergies, allergies. The allergies are being founded in the gut as the microbes are putting our immune systems on hyper alert. It also says facilitate digestion, I've covered that, and developmental inducer. The child will wean himself, despite how pleasant, when the bacteria decide they're ready for food, for solid food. It might be a year and a half, it might be 2 years, it might be 4 years, if we let the body decide. And then we give the habitat and the nutrients. So what's happened now, the game has changed. And what we did in the 20th century does not work so well in the 21st century. Something has happened at the YK2 or whatever that they were talking about that's changed. In the old days, we'd sit in our nutrition ivory towers and go, oh, this person has liver, most everything is liver issue, I'm going to give them liver herbs and they get well in 30 days. Back then, chiropractors would say, I gave an adjustment and the person got over asthma. I gave an adjustment, no migraine. The acupuncturist would say, oh, I just did a couple of needlings, the person's doing well. Everyone is struggling to get results. Well, we just have to look at the things of our environment, the electromagnetic, just call it cell phone, things like that have come along and changed the game. Well, what was the game before? And it was a game when we avoided what was called idiopathic disease. An idiopathic disease just means it's unknown pathogenesis or spontaneous origin, right? It means no known cause, no known cure. So we had these few diseases that we were going to pay a lot of money to Jerry Lewis to help the kids, or put it into the American Cancer Society, that these few idiopathic diseases would be conquered by throwing dollars and the greatest brains of humanity at them. And so that was the issue. And coming out of this model, now, though, we were getting some overwhelming evidence that we have to change this model, that it's not working anymore. It was set up by Dr. Koch. I want to say Koch, K-O-C-H, and if I could do the German throat clearing, I could say his name properly. I like to say names properly, but I don't want to try right now. And then Louis Pasteur, and that's where we got set up on the antibiotic. The human genome study is telling us we cannot be doing antibiotics and sustain health. We can't keep killing indiscriminately the microbes. So we've got this whole thing of idiopathic disease, which I just say it's really pathologies created by idiots. So when idiocy occupies positions of authority, it wreaks havoc and destruction. And so this is where we get the parochial, dictatorial, and moneyed interest. If there's not a $100,000 diagnostic system established, then it becomes an idiopathic disease because no one is trying to treat it, right? And so we have this situation, and this comes back to Dr. Koch, and this is where we all learned our pathology and our systems. We have to unlearn, and that's why you're in this room. You're one of the brilliant unlearners. And I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. But the whole model fails to understand inflammation and chronic inflammation. So it's the constructive linear thinking becomes the ally of disease because it fails to apply epigenetics, right? That we can adapt and we can survive and we can turn things on and turn switches off. You might be wondering, what's the switch turner? A lot of times, it's a methyl donor, right? Now the big campaign is MTHFR, that people have all these methyl anomalies. And so everybody's taken methyl B12, methylfolate, some B6, and some things that provide the methylation pathway support. And because a methyl donor, if it sits on a chromosome, it shuts down that sequence. So when the transcription occurs, it skips over it. It's like you go into the library and you're taking 5 books, but you miss one on the subject because it had a methyl donor on it and you didn't see it. It got pushed back because the guy that came there ahead of you pushed it back so you couldn't see it. And okay, so here's the fallacy though. If a pen pops a balloon. Removing the pen does not fix the balloon. This is the essence of what medicine is struggling with. And I will explain this further, but I want you to think about this. Autoimmunity can persist long after the pathogens are gone because the epigenetic switch was thrown. That's the problem. Otherwise, if this bad bug in our tummies is really, let's say go back to the case of the woman with psoriasis, if the 3 bad bugs are causing psoriasis, you kill the 3 bad bugs, she ought to get over psoriasis. That's the medical law. That's almost like the central dogma that genetic transcription is only a one-way street, that didn't leave room for epigenetics. If you're with me on this, I hope. You probably know more than I do. But I just don't want to leave anyone, because this is really important, because we're going to walk out here in a few minutes. We have a new paradigm, or at least aware. You already know we need a new paradigm. I'm just trying to add a little more flavor and color to it. So they didn't account for methylation. It didn't account for histone folding on how genetics are presented. That little fold inside our DNA and the transcription's different. A little tweak here of what books you pick out of the library of life and bring out of the cell to run cellular metabolism. They also don't understand in this medical model the directive to cure. The directive to cure, they've flirted with directives to cure in medicine. One of the best examples of a directive to cure on some of these diseases, they didn't know what idiopathic diseases. Seriously now, you probably heard of this, but maybe not. You bend the person over the bench, grab that Phi Beta Kappa paddle from the fraternity days, take a running start and whack them on the butt. The shock of that trauma triggers the brain to release healing influences, and they would actually be able to put MS or something like that into a period of remission because of the trauma. Or you might say, in another sense, pregnancy solves the problems until after pregnancy when they come back. And so that's a directive to cure. Now, if you're a little less crude than that, you might give a homeopathic remedy. That would be a directive to the body to cure according to that frequency and characteristic. Acupuncture needles can be a directive to cure. Nutrition can be a directive to cure. The incomplete immune response to antibiotics, we don't learn. We're becoming dependent on antibiotics. Our systems are not being finished. In other words, the cloning of acquired immunity is impeded. So now we have Sir Isaac Newton, who gave us one of the laws that govern things for us. A body in motion stays in motion, right? A body at rest stays at rest, unless acted on by another force. That's the directive to cure. We got to have that. It's not just a matter of kill the bugs. The disease can go away, but the disease is not going to go away. If it's locked in, the body needs a directive to cure. So, anyway, Newton had it right there for us. And, he had a few other laws that seem very applicable too. I think the law of emotion was one of his most famous, and that was for every male action, there's a female overreaction. And then Newton's wife was actually responsible for balancing the yin and yang, and it was for every good solution there's a male to foul it up. So we have these laws that have been handed down to us. So now, you may know a little bit, I'm not going to tell the whole story, but back at the turn of the century back there, around 1900, there was this, it couldn't have been 1900 because Pasteur died before then, but in his latter years, Pasteur and Beecham took the front page of the news. Again, today, I still can't figure out if Jennifer has gotten married or not, but or if Justin is having an affair, I just don't know. But this was front page news. This was Super Bowl stuff. Honestly, we just came out of a Super Bowl. I'm sure you remember who won. And this was front page news because it was the age of enlightenment. It was science is going to solve our problems. And so scientific studies and arguments were literally on the street. You know, extra, extra, read all about it. And these two gentlemen duked it out. Now, Beecham was a pleomorphist. He said that bacteria could mutate. Pasteur says, well, I don't see that under the microscope. Prove it. Then Beecham said, well, they don't mutate in front of you. They go back into the invisible world and become a proteid, and they may manifest back again as a fungus. Beecham was a believer in the terrain is everything. So if you have a certain terrain of rich sugar and weak immunity, then you grow candida. If you have a different kind of trash terrain, you grow bacteria. And so they argued this out, and Pasteur said, look, I've got the microscope, I see the bug, and we're gonna pasteurize that milk, and then look, we don't have all the deaths from spoiled milk, or from, not spoiled milk, but from contaminated milk. Actually, raw milk spoils better than pasteurized milk, and it is safer to drink. But Pasteur was dealing with the fact that it was the cow poop getting in the milk, and thus the microorganisms that could be pathogenic, fecal microorganisms that were causing epidemics. So this is where they duked it out. Now, if you know the story, they fought it out. Pasteur got the upper hand. It went on into Lister, who made Listerine, so we could kill the oral microbiome and do the same thing to it. And on Pasteur's deathbed, he said, Beecham is right. The microbe is nothing. The terrain is everything. And they was there, it was recorded, but nobody wanted to listen because he was dying and he was a crazy guy. He was giving the apology. He was giving the realization that if the body has the trash terrain, you're going to get trash species that will do you harm. The whole thing was about individual integrity. Now, this has huge ramifications for the vaccination system, because we're not doing anything to build the body's natural resistance. And then we poison the body and break the blood-brain barrier with the reagents in the vaccines that have to insult the immune system in order to get the vaccine to work. It's not just the bug, they have to put poison in a vaccine to make it work. It's the antagonist. Okay, now, so Pasteur pretty well won, and Lister made Listerine. He didn't really, it was the university. But the whole idea became, these bugs exist, we got to kill them. This is where it got started. So now we have the Robert Koch. Now, you know, I don't look at these guys as being bad guys, and Koch did a lot of work with smallpox and bacteria, and he came up with these postulates that it makes sense. This is a scientific model. You see the disease, you find the bacteria causing it. If you have the disease, you got the bacteria. Very clear. Cholera, you drink the water, everybody's got the Vibrio, they're dying. And so the second thing is, you got to be able to grow it, then you can identify it. Okay, this is science, this is using the microscope. Then you have to be able to take this culture and give it to animals and reproduce the disease. So now you take the cholera and you give it to a healthy animal. Now that animal's got cholera. And then you go to that animal after it dies from cholera, and sure enough, there's the disease. This all makes perfect sense. So the idea is, you kill the bug, you create the cure. Now we're up to the 1950s, and we've got the silver bullet, penicillin, right? We took that bread mold and turned it into a drug, and now people that would have died didn't. And it was halcyon days of medicine, the silver bullet. And truly a blessing. Would you not agree? I mean, I haven't had an antibiotic personally in over 52 years. And it'd probably be the last thing I would do, but there are times that an antibiotic is very helpful. Would you not agree? Your gut shot on the battlefield, it's not time to have a carrot juice. You see? So, we don't throw the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. And in fact, this model works for some diseases. I don't know why it had to be that smallpox was the first disease. Smallpox is such a wuss of an organism. It was easily killed, right? There's the little cowpox or a little pus from the cowpox. It was similar enough. Smallpox is virtually eradicated. But let me tell you, these other diseases that are coming from viral and protozoal and symbiotic forms of those, they're a different story. And this is where we start seeing the vaccinations are failing and they're causing a lot of damage. So the issue came up that we didn't understand immunity's great flaw, that when we disturb all of this, we have entered now into the age of chronic inflammation. You might recall the cover of Time magazine. It was a milestone. 2004, the world found out the secret killer was inflammation, directly related to cancer and Alzheimer's, and of course, Crohn's and anything you could name. It's all pretty much now, it's the silent inflammation. It's the inflammation of the cell membrane. It's the inflammation of the brain where we don't have receptors to cry out in pain. This is not the elbow inflammation. This is not, oh, my neck's all inflamed or my ankle is sprained. This is cell membrane inflammation. So get a load of this. If you have silent cell membrane inflammation from eating trans fats that the government said to eat, right? To use margarine and protect your heart. You have this cellular inflammation from the environmental toxins. Now your hormones can't dock. Insulin can't get the glucose through. You see, it's really a membrane issue. Diabetes is a membrane issue. And once it goes in the cell, it's not just the cell, it's the mitochondrial membrane. So, I call it the nuclear membrane, and trying to do transcription. The gatekeepers are up in arms now, and it's killing us. So these inflamed cell membranes block communication. Isn't that the crux of life? Being able to communicate. Receptors don't work. Warnings to other cells don't work. And so the mitochondria goes into chronic fatigue. It turns the thermostat down because it's got to protect itself from free radical damage. So welcome to the world of glutathione and catalase and superoxide dismutase, and why there's a multi-billion-dollar industry in antioxidants. I sure like the days when my dentist sold me vitamin C and an antioxidant. I think now that's not scope of practice or something, but I can't find a dentist that's supporting my oral health nutritionally anymore. I really can, I know, to go to a biological dentist, but I'm just talking in the industry. So now we have the situation of dysbiosis. Too many bad guys, not enough good guys in the gut, driving inflammation throughout the body, disrupting. If you have leaky gut, you have leaky brain. Now the brain is becoming susceptible to the environmental toxins all the more, and the brain runs the show. How do you heal if your brain is messed up? How do you correct hormones? Well, you could wear a patch and put horse urine on your arm, or you could try to fix the brain, see? So this is what's happened now with our world. Even stress. We don't like to talk about stress, I guess, because we all just live it so much. We don't like to talk about cell phone radiation because we get our entire lives in that phone. I can look up anything, I call, hey Siri, call home. It's so marvelous stuff. But if these things are rattling DNA, we're becoming stressed on more levels than worrying about if Jen has gotten married. So the level of stress that we operate under is telling our gut microbiome it's a hostile world, and it makes them tougher. It's nature versus nurture. You know, they argue that in psychology, and the fact is they're both right. You know, a child from parents killed in front of it in a war zone walking the rubble of, the streets, chances are that person's going to have a different orientation. They're not going to be maybe writing haiku at dawn, they might be robbing a house. We know that. We know too that babies that are nurtured do grow into artistic brains. This is Bruce Lipton 101. So biology of belief, very interesting things, but they're both going on. As above, so below, right? Hermes Trismegistus, as above, so below. As below, so above. The microcosm, macrocosm. I told you we could solve every challenge of humanity by understanding how to take care of the gut microbiome. So if we're stressed, they're stressed. If they're stressed, they're building different biofilms. They're acting a little more uppity. We get that dysbiosis where now there's more bad guys. When you have too many bad guys running around for, let's say, the police to take care of, you end up with gang neighborhoods. We see it in the macrocosm, same thing in the microcosm. These bacteria, they hang out. Next thing you know, doggone it, they've taken the back room of the pool hall, right there in the gut, and then they will be exuding a toxic influence. We've talked about leaky gut. Just let you see the slides if you're not that familiar. It's directly linked with Alzheimer's, autism, depression, anxiety, headaches. This is where people get into the gaps. Are you giving me a signal now? I'm going to do the wrap. I'll do the wrap up. Anyway, and she is so sweet. She has not done that yet. And I just noticed that the shepherd's crook on the floor there, I guess that would get a verbose speaker. And so really quickly, all this research has pointed to something that I've trademarked actually, because I'm a forerunner, but I call it PACT, P.A.C.T, probiotic, advanced colonization technique. But we've got to go ahead and knock down some pathogens, but we do it very selectively and safely with the botanicals. We have to heal the leaky gut. There's ingredients that get the zonulin turned off. That's the open sesame molecule. We have to get back to the brain and have the neurotransmitter support. We restore the gut immune system. We bring in the good guys. These are probiotics. So the question is, how can we reseed someone's gut with 12 or 40 or whatever species of probiotics when there just happen to be what grows commercially? We each have unique probiotic we each have a unique microbiome. Now we have a problem. We don't have the tools. Your microbiome is different than mine. You eat different, you think differently. Remember, thought controls it. You eat, you think, you breathe, everything in your environment. Your genetics is a different microbiome. This is adapt and survive for both species. We're made to adapt and survive with bacteria. We cannot live without them. Now, okay, so I say take acidophilus. How's that supposed to do anything? Here's the deal. Probiotic recolonization, we're ousting the bad guys. We're at least getting some good guys in. I call them peacekeepers. See, we can go back. I could have been talking about Iraq, and the microbiome could have told us a better way to have dealt with that situation, but because it's politically charged, then you think I have a political soapbox. But hey, let's sit around in the evening, have some wine, give some wine to our microbiomes, and we can talk about such lofty things. Now, so what these are peacekeepers, and while they're keeping the peace, way beyond the green zone, now it's the story of if you build it, they will come. And just like that baby that has 2 or 3 bifidos in the gut, how'd they get there? How'd they cross the placenta barrier? How do the bacteria migrate to the breast milk? Because the bloodstream they'll get killed. Interesting. If you build it, they will come. The hormones build it. The immune system looks the other way. And nature prevails. So and then we reinforce this by taking probiotics. There are certain probiotic species that can turn off eczema. It's just we don't use them as an adult. Lactobacillus infantilis. You can take it as a supplement, but you got to keep taking it. So these are the laws that govern, if we think about it from the higher truth of where in nature. What do I have, 5 minutes?
No.
Okay, I'm gone. Here we go. Ready? Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Dr. Tips.